In Enlisted, you're not going to be doing a lot of mass bayonet charges unless you want to die quickly. Not even banzai charges will work because what's going to happen is that you're just going to get mowed down. If not by tanks, then by guys who are holding rifles, M1 Grands, and even SMGs. As of right now, I have officially posted 2 Pacific videos. However, as I found out, a lot of people that I've talked to don't know a lot about Japanese weapons or weapons used by the Empire of Japan. Therefore, in this video, I would like to explore not only some of the weapons used by the Empire of Japan, but also some weapons that were similar to those weapons. My name is Napoleon Total, and let's get started. The first thing that we have to talk about are the rifles, and they are going to be the bread and butter and the backbone of the army. These rifles are the Type 30, the Type 38, the Type 97, and the Type 99 rifles. The Imperial Japanese Army introduced the Type 30 rifle in 1897. However, the weapon had numerous shortcomings which were highlighted by combat experiences during the early stages of the Russo-Japanese War. These included bursting cartridges, a poorly designed lock-in which exceeded gunpowder leading to articulation, burning the face of the shooter, subsequent misfires, and even jamming, difficulty in cleaning, and cartridge extraction. In 1939, the Type 38 rifle was manufactured with the arsenal cost of 75.9 yen per unit. In 1940, more than 3 million Type 38s have been issued to the Imperial Japanese Army. However, concern is that the 6.5 by 50 Arasaka cartridges did not compare favorably to the ammunition of the other great powers in the war, which led to the increase of further generation of rifles in 1939 during the Sino-Japanese War. Designated as the Type 99 rifles, these new rifles produce a powerful 7.7 by 58 Arasaka cartridge, which was already in use in the Type 92 heavy machine guns and in the Type 97 light machine guns. However, not all units received a new weapon, and a mixture of types with different cartridges and different rifles led to a considerable logistics issue during the Second World War. Some of the rifles that are most similar to the Type 99 and the Type 38 are the Karakano rifles used in Axis Tunisia. This rifle is pretty similar in the sense that the sights are pretty much the same, the mechanic is pretty much the same, and even some Karakano rifles have been used with a 6.5 by 50 Arasaka cartridge. The only difference is that the Karakano has 6 rounds and the Arasaka primarily has 5. Another interesting note is that the Type 38 is also in game in Allies Moscow. This rifle is pretty good, all-rounder, and what makes it even more interesting is that the Type 38 has a Type 30 bayonet, which is the official bayonet of the Imperial Japanese Army, which I hope is going to be introduced in the Pacific. But that is all it for rifles. Let's move on to SMGs. In terms of SMGs, the Japanese had the Type 100 SMG. The Type 100 SMG was the only SMG produced by the Japanese in any quality. This was made by 2 basic variants referred to the Americans and the British as the Type 140 and 144 SMGs, later known as the Type 100 SMG. A large number of these early versions were converted into folding stocks, sometimes referred to the Allies as the Type 100 Navy, which was also used by paratroopers. This weapon looked a lot like the Sten, and although it doesn't function like a Sten, it sounds similar to the OVP. The OVP is obviously once again in Axis Tunisia, and it is one of the late game weapons that is quite similar to the Type 100 in terms of fire rate and use and sound, of course. But in terms of looks, it looks more like a Sten with a curved barrel. That is all for SMGs. Let's move on to LMGs. In terms of light machine guns, the Japanese had the Type 99 light machine gun. Prior to the development of the Type 99, the Imperial Japanese Army used the Type 96 machine gun, which was an improvement over the Type 11 light machine gun. The Type 96 has been introduced in combat service in 1936 and provided to be a versatile weapon of covering fire for advancing infantry. However, in 1939, the Japanese Army was in process of switching to the larger and more powerful 7.7mm cartridge, which also had no rim, which improved cartridge handling. This more powerful cartridge, which had 3000J energy compared to the earlier 6.550 cartridge, which had 1900J, required a firearm that had more steel, bigger springs, and heavier bolt to handle the extra firing involved. This required a switch from the Type 38 rifles to the Type 99 rifles, which we covered a few seconds ago. Similarly, it was also necessary to develop a new machine gun, which the Type 96 was not. Therefore, the Type 99 light machine gun was born. A good example of the Type 99 light machine gun in game is the ZB-26. The ZB-26 was a Czech machine gun used by the Czech forces, and it was copied by almost every major power, which include Britain, France, Germany, and even the United States, and Japan definitely. The Japanese would copy the ZB-26 into their own Type 96 and Type 99 machine guns. Unlike the ZB-26, the Type 99 actually had a bayonet mount. and that is going to be interesting considering the fact that as of right now in Enlisted there is no bayonets on light machine guns, but hopefully in Enlisted we are going to see a bayonet on light machine guns. That is all it for light machine guns. Let's move on to tanks. In terms of tanks, the Japanese had the Ha-Go. This was a light tank used by the Imperial Japanese Army during the Sino-Japanese War at Normandy against the Soviet Union and during the Second World War. The tank proved to be sufficient against infantry, but it was not designed to combat any other tanks, especially the M3 American Stuart light tanks. Approximately 203,000 were produced, making it the most numerous Japanese armored vehicle during the Second World War. An interesting note is that a lot of people give a lot of bad light to the Ha-Go tank. And although the Ha-Go did have numerous shortcomings including the suspension, the Japanese Ha-Go tank was made for jungle fighting, while the American tanks were not. In all reality and in research, the Japanese Ha-Go did better in jungle terrain than the American tanks, which tend to bog down. That said, in terms of firepower, almost every American tank can take out a Ha-Go. Even some Soviet anti-tank guns can one-shot the Ha-Go. A good comparison between the Ha-Go is the M1441 tank, which is the first Italian tank that you unlock in Enlisted. This tank is similar to the Ha-Go in the sense that it had almost the same suspension, it was almost the same speed, with a similar cannon, and it provided the same usage. That said, the Japanese Ha-Go was slightly faster, and that is all pretty much for tanks. Another interesting thing that I would like to talk about is the swords. During World War II, the Japanese Empire made a lot of swords, and not only for ceremonial use, but actually battlefield use too. The swords were mass-produced in Japan, and they were handed out to soldiers on the front lines, especially officers. These swords tend to be lower quality, but with the exception of some swords that were traditional swords for traditional uses, in the sense that if you had a sword that was passed down by a generation, those swords are usually better in terms of quality and steel than the swords made by the Japanese army during the Second World War. As the years go on during the war, the Japanese swords will get degraded. That said, I would really like to use this segment of time to talk about bayonets and swords. In Enlisted, bayonets and swords are not really that good. You really don't have a lot of choice when charging at an enemy full on. You really do have to flank, and even if you flank, you are gonna get killed eventually. In terms of swords, it's cool, but it is not effective. For bayonets, it's useful, especially for killing the wounded, but it is not good for a frontline combat unless you're right in front of the enemy. During the American Civil War, there was only one recorded instance of a bayonet encounter, and that was when a soldier stabbed his fellow soldier in front of him by accident. That was actually recorded by a Confederate Army surgeon, and that is the only recorded instance of a bayonet strike. That said, there are other instances during the American Civil War that have not been sadly recorded, with the notable exception of Little Round Top and some other notable exceptions. My point is that in Enlisted, you're not going to be doing a lot of mass bayonet charges unless you want to die quickly. Not even banzai charges will work, because what's going to happen is that you're just going to get mowed down. If not by tanks, then by guys who are holding rifles, M1 Grands, and even SMGs. That is all it for today. Have a great day, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join the Discord, and I'll see you in the next one. Now before you leave, I would like to thank you very much for watching this video. I would be honored if you could like and subscribe to the channel. Remember, more videos are coming out, so it is a good idea to click on that notification button. Anyways, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.